Alright, today I want to talk about a fairly new character in DC, Dark Legion, and that is Red Hood Knightfight. I think this is one of the most interesting damage dealers the game has released in recent months. Not because he's powerful in the traditional sense, but because his damage mechanic is quite unique, something I haven't seen on any other character in this game so far. So how exactly does Red Hood Knightfight work? First, let's talk about his background. He belongs to the Firepower class and is part of both the Bat Family and League of Assassins factions. This immediately gives him a huge advantage when it comes to team building because you have multiple directions you can take. But what truly makes him different is not his factions, it's his damage mechanic. Red Hood Knightfight is the first character I've seen in DC, Dark Legion, that uses a damage system based on a percentage of the enemy's maximum HP, meaning max HP scaling. This mechanic becomes extremely dangerous when facing tanks with massive health pools, and I'll explain why in a moment. Looking at his skill kit, Skill 1 is his most basic ability. He fires a volley of arrows in a fan-shaped area, dealing physical damage equal to 800% attack with a 10-second cooldown. Nothing too special here. This is simply his foundation skill. But Skill 2 starts to reveal how his entire engine works. Skill 2 is a passive that increases his critical damage by 75%, and for every Bat Family or League of Assassins ally on the battlefield, his critical rate increases by an additional 12%. Think about that for a second. If you're running a team with 4 allies from those factions, that's 4 times 12%, giving him an extra 48% critical rate from this passive alone before equipment or faction bonuses are even considered. This is why his entire kit revolves around critical hits, and I need to emphasize this. Critical rate is not simply a nice stat to have, it is a mandatory requirement for the character to function properly. Moving on to Skill 3, this is his ultimate. He fires a barrage of arrows that deals physical damage equal to 1200% attack, plus 40% of the target's max HP. The total damage is capped at 2400% attack. What I want you to pay attention to here is that 40% max HP component. Against a tank with around 500,000 HP in endgame content, 40% of its max HP translates into roughly 200,000 bonus damage from a single ultimate. This is exactly why I call him a professional anti-tank specialist. The more HP your opponent builds, the faster they can actually die when facing Red Hood Knightfight. But in my personal opinion, Skill 4 is the most ridiculous part of his kit. This passive triggers whenever he lands a critical hit. He immediately throws a grenade that deals physical damage equal to 400% attack plus 15% of the target's max HP, with total damage capped at 1000% attack. It can trigger once every 5 seconds. Do you see the pattern now? Critical hits trigger grenades. Grenades scale with enemy max HP, and the entire team composition is designed to push critical rate as high as possible so that this cycle keeps running consistently. This is a true hyper carry, but not the kind that explodes with one massive burst and then falls off. Instead, he's a hyper carry that continuously amplifies his own damage output as the fight progresses. Now let's talk about his legacy effects because there are 2 particularly important ones. The first is Counterstrike, unlocked at 5 red stars. Whenever he lands a critical hit, his basic attack switches into rapid fire, dealing an additional 150% attack plus 15% of the target's max HP to 2 enemies, capped at 600% attack. This effect can trigger up to once per second. The second is Press the Attack, unlocked at 5 gold stars. Every critical hit increases his attack by 8%, stacking up to 10 times. That means he can gain up to 80% additional attack during a single battle. When you combine these 2 effects, the result is simple. The longer the fight lasts, the stronger he becomes. Every critical hit not only deals damage, but also pushes his entire damage output to the next level. In long boss battles, this stacking mechanic becomes absolutely terrifying. Now, I want to talk about team compositions because this is the part that most people ask me about. The first question is usually, should you run Bat Family or League of Assassins? My honest answer is that Bat Family feels smoother for Red Hood Knightfight because it directly supports critical rate and dodge, while League of Assassins provides bonus physical damage when enemy HP falls below 70%. League of Assassins is not bad, but its activation condition depends on the enemy's HP status, making it less consistent when you need to deal heavy damage right from the start of the battle. The team composition I currently find most effective is the pure Bat family crit burst team. Red Hood Knightfight, Nightwing, Batgirl, Orphan, and Red Robin. This is the setup I use for clearing boss stages, and it has been performing extremely well. Nightwing serves as a co-carry, finishing off enemies that survive after Red Hood Knightfight has already shredded their HP. Batgirl is the most important piece of the team because she provides critical rate support for the entire core, and Red Hood Knightfight's kit requires consistent critical rate to function properly. Without Batgirl, his entire crit grenade rapid fire loop becomes much less reliable and significantly less effective. Orphan and Red Robin hold the front line and protect the rest of the team. With a full 5-member Bat family lineup, you gain an additional 24% critical rate and 24% dodge for the entire team. When combined with Red Hood Knightfight's Skill 2 passive, his total critical rate becomes extremely high without requiring excessive investment into equipment. If you want a more durable team for long PvE battles, I have another variation. Replace Orphan with Starfire.
Together we are
This creates a hybrid
unstoppable.
between Bat family and Teen Titans. You lose some pure critical hit potential, but gain significantly more sustain. I usually use this version for stages that require surviving multiple rounds rather than committing to an all-in burst strategy. The trade-off is obvious. This team does not maximize damage like full Bat family, but it is much less likely to get wiped out by enemies with heavy AoE damage. If you want to experiment with a hybrid between the two factions, you can run Red Hood Knightfight, Nightwing, Batgirl, Deathstroke, and either Bane or Ra's al Ghul. This setup is interesting because Red Hood Knightfight handles AoE damage and percentage HP damage. Deathstroke eliminates priority targets with powerful single-target burst, while Bane or Ra's al Ghul hold the line and buy time for the two carries to do their work. The downside is that the team lacks a truly reliable tank, so this is essentially a high-risk composition. It is incredibly powerful if you can eliminate enemies before they eliminate you, but it becomes less consistent in longer battles. As for stat priorities on Red Hood Knightfight, this is my recommended order. First, and most importantly, critical rate. It must be high enough for the kit to function consistently. This is a non-negotiable requirement. Second, critical damage. Since Skill 2 already grants 75% critical damage, you want to push that number even higher so every critical hit feels like a real burst instead of being only slightly stronger than a normal attack. Third, physical penetration or armor penetration. This is especially important because percentage HP damage does not completely bypass armor in every situation, so armor penetration is still necessary to maximize overall damage output. Fourth, attack percent. This increases the base damage of the entire kit, since most of his abilities scale with attack. Fifth, energy gain bonus if you want to cycle your ultimate more quickly, which is particularly useful in extended boss fights. Speed is not a major priority for him. Overall, I place Red Hood Knightfight in S tier for both PvE and PvP. In PvE boss fights and stage progression, his percentage HP damage mechanic does not scale down as bosses gain larger health pools at higher stage levels. Because of this, he has excellent long-term value within the meta. In PvP, the entire crit grenade loop, combined with the rapid fire effect from the Counter-Strike Legacy, is more than enough to delete a target within seconds, if built correctly. PvP teams built around him tend to be highly aggressive and all-in, but if you successfully trigger the critical hit loop, the battle ends very quickly. The only thing I want to emphasize is that Red Hood Knightfight requires proper investment. He is not the type of character you can simply throw into a team and immediately expect results. If his critical rate is too low, most of his kit effectively stops functioning because nearly every passive trigger depends on critical hits. However, once he is properly built, especially with Batgirl providing critical hit support and his legacy upgrades unlocked, he becomes one of the strongest hypercarries I have seen so far in DC, Dark Legion. That is everything I wanted to share about Red Hood Knightfight today. If you are wondering whether he is worth investing in, my short answer is yes. However, make sure you are also building Batgirl and have at least 2 or 3 other Bat family characters to fully maximize the faction bonuses. Good luck, have fun, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I will do my best to answer them.